boiled down milk. All right, are we all here? Srinivasru, Rasal? This is for the shock, yeah. Okay, so for the shock, we'll start with the shock first. Everything's fried first up. Turn it all off. Everything off. Turn off your gas if anybody has any dal on the fire or anything. Or just do it. We continue after. Okay, so everything's fried for the shock. For the chaunce.
So all the things have to be fried.
Yes, all items have to be fried. Okay, so for the chaunce, everybody with me here? Everybody listening?
Yes.
I want you to get it all right in the same way, okay?
Yeah.
Wash your hands and pay attention here. Okay, so first up, then chili. We're putting chili.
Ghee first.
Obviously, yeah, ghee first. Yeah, so with the chaunce, then first ghee. Chili. Panch Phoron. And ginger. That's it. We're not using any hing, we're not using anything else. This is for the shock again.
Oh, shock.
Again, for the shock, we're using Panch Phoron, the mix of 5 spices like we talked about, chili, and a little bit of ginger. So you want to kind of estimate how much you need by just kind of looking at your amount. So this is the amount of shock, that's the amount of vegetable. You don't want too much whole spice in here, like I told you before. Like a teaspoon I'm putting. Okay? Keep your ginger ready. Keep your ginger ready. And as soon as the fenugreek starts changing color, then you throw your ginger in there. Everybody with me? Lightly fry your ginger.
You know where the ginger is in there? The Panch Phoron won't really burn.
No, as soon as you add something wet to the ghee, then everything else stops burning. As long as those things don't dry out.
Yeah.
So you don't want to continue frying your ginger until it fries up and then the Panch Phoron starts frying again. If that makes sense. Okay. So then after the ginger's slightly fried. Okay, sorry, I completely skipped a step. So with the spinach, what I did is you just stick it in a pot with some water, just a little bit of water down at the bottom. You put salt. We all writing this down? You put salt and a little bit of water just at the bottom and cover it for about maybe 2-3 minutes. And then when the shock reduces and wilts completely in the pot, then you turn it off and just leave it off for a good 5 minutes. And then the spinach stems you check. You don't check the leaves will cook very fast. You check the stems. If the stems break easily in your fingers, then it's done. Okay?
So is it not
Yeah.
You have to boil that first.
boiling for 2-3 minutes?
Yeah, it's just boiling 2 to 3 minutes. It's not very long. You don't want to overboil this, just like we talked about with the palak paneer. Go ahead.
So, Prabhu, what about just putting
Yep.
this? You cut the stem and the leaves separately.
Yep.
Then put the stem in the oil first. Then later you put the leaves.
No. You do it exactly like I just said. You don't need to speculate. You just boil like I said to do that. You want to pre-boil it, and then you just put it in, as long as the stems are cooked. Okay, make sure those stems are cooked. They cook really fast. This is fresh spinach. It just got cut from the field this morning, so it won't have any issue. You put the vegetables in there. Turmeric, half a teaspoon maybe. Something like that, depends on the quantity, of course. Cumin. little bit of coriander. Okay.
What did you give first?
You're just salting the vegetables, okay? Be very careful with this. When you boil your shock, you don't want to fully salt it. You just salt it a little bit because always remember shock reduces to a little bit less than half. Salt for your vegetables.
So everything is cooked already now.
Everything's cooked already. Then you want to dry this up. You want to cook it until everything gets a little bit dry. Could you get me a lemon from the fridge, please? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay.
High flame.
When the water is just about dried up, when you're stirring it, you can kind of work the vegetables in a bit. You know what I mean? You don't want to completely obliterate them, but you do want to. It shouldn't be. The vegetables shouldn't be like falling apart. It should be, you know. You can almost make like a ball out of it. Okay, on.
We are on high flame, bro.
I just put it on the high flame just to be quick. You can do it on low flame, it's not a problem. A little bit of lemon.
Shall I wash it?
Cream. We're using the cream for the shukta as well, so it's not a problem. Smetana. Okay.
Looks like an Asian salad.
Okay, is that good?
Prabhupada's recipe, no, bro.
Yeah, Prabhupada actually put fresh cream. Prabhupada would put fresh cream in it. Prabhupada grew up in Kolkata. So his way he used to cook, you see from almost all of his preps, it has a little bit of a richness to it. The more you go north, away from Kolkata, then the cuisine changes a lot. It becomes a little bit more traditional Bengali. The style of Bengali cooking that you get in Kolkata is mixed with other influences from North India, Marwari, like that. So it has a richness to it, which I think is actually quite a nice addition. Okay? Give me another cloth. Please, thank you. Need a lid for this?
Okay.
You give that a rinse. Okay. Just give it a rinse. Rinse it out. I need the pot.
Yes.
Alright, so for gulags,
You do.
it's koa. Yes.
This is the stuff which they mix potato.
Yeah, I actually don't mix potato. We usually have a decent, we usually get a decent quality supply of koa. Doesn't have too much rubbish mixed into it. But the only rubbish they can put is either mashed potatoes or flour. So it's not actually that bad. Could you give me the cedar cup that's right in there? Yeah, just a cup. And then another pot. Well, one of those, yeah, one of those Karags.
Small one?
The small one, yeah. Okay. Later. Stir.
This is sugar water.
Just sugar water. I'll explain everything in a second. All right. So for the gulab jamuns, I'll first explain the sugar syrup, then we'll move on to the actual gulabs. So sugar syrup is, there's two different sugar syrups here. There's a thick one and a thin one. I'll explain the application of them both in a minute after we get to the frying. But the thick one, so how I do it, I make a thick batch and then I take some out and make the thinner batch with just some water. So the thick one is 1.5 water, 1 sugar. So if you have 1 liter of water, 1.5 sugar. Simple proportion. Yes.
1.5 is too much.
1 water, 1.5 sugar.
1 water.
Yes. 1 water, 1.5 sugar. So it should, when it cools down, it'll be quite a thick syrup. Then the one that you have here, you don't have to boil it for long, you just have to dissolve the sugar. If you overboil the syrup, then it starts to go, the more you boil it, the more the sugar caramelizes and the more it'll go brown. So it's a little bit on the brownish side, which is okay, it's not bad. The thin syrup is 1:1.
1 sugar syrup and 1 water.
So we can
1
use,
sugar and 1 water. So I took sugar syrup from here and added extra water to get the proportion right.
so we can use only warm water. If you have, yes?
Which water?
Warm water.
You can use cold water and just heat up the water. Yeah.
Cold also. It's okay.
Yeah, I just use, yeah. Okay, so that's clear about the sugar syrup. All right, one trick for the sugar syrup. I don't have milk today, so I can't do it. But when you make sugar syrup for anything, then the best way, even for the halva, then the best thing to do is when it's boiling on a full boil, then you add some milk into it. Maybe like a 1/4 cup of milk or whatever. And then what will happen is that it'll clear out all the cloudiness in the sugar, and all the impurities and foam will come to the top, and you can take it off. Sorry? You just skim it off the top, yeah.
Half cup milk.
Yeah, like a 1/2 cup of milk for, 5 liters of water. 5 liters of syrup. So if you have 1 liter of water, then you just need, maybe a tablespoon of milk. It's really little amount of milk. Okay, so that's a syrup principle that almost anybody does. Any confectionery business, they always purify the sugar syrups with something. You can use milk, you can use calcium powder. There's many different things that they use. Milk is the purest, obviously, so better to always use milk. Basically, anything that's alkaline will purify the sugar syrup. That's why the calcium in the milk is whatever. Okay, so for the gulabs themselves, so you want to just break it up. So the best way to breaking it up is just use a grater. Once you have it grated like this, then you break this into 10 parts. Where'd my knife go?
Yeah. What is this?
It's a koa. So the koa, start from the beginning. The koa is just boiled down milk. That's all it is. It's the same thing basically if you had a milk powder. It's basically the same thing. It's just you'd have to reconstitute the milk powder with water to get this consistency. So if you have milk, 5 liters of milk for instance, you boil it down into this consistency, like a burfi, without any sugar in it at all. It'll take maybe a half hour in a decent sized pot. Make sense? So that's what that is. Okay, so
We can use the dry milk,
you can use the dry milk.
but it's better.
You would have to, I don't have the proportions off the top of my head, how much water to put into the dry milk powder. I haven't done it in a really long time. I've done it in the past and it's come out decently, but they're completely different. They become a bit spongy. They're nice, they're just very different. The texture is different. Okay, so you break it into tenths, quarter, eighth, and then I just kind of estimate it from here. Get an eighth and just take a little bit off of it. Okay, so that's about a tenth. I do it into eighths and just take a little bit off of that, if that makes sense. You don't want to put too much of the maida and the corn flour, but it's not so specific. Yes, so then there's 2 flours that go in here. Some people use corn flour, some people get better results using arrowroot flour, arrowroot starch. I use corn flour and arrowroot. I find that they give about the same result. So that's 1/10 of the koa is maida, white flour, and 1/10 of the koa is also corn flour. So you have equal proportions of corn flour and white flour, and you have to 1/10 of the koa. Am I saying that right? 1/10 of the koa is white flour and corn flour.
Please, can you repeat about how much the corn flour?
Same quantity of flour.
Same amount?
No? Same quantity of flour. What?
Corn flour.
No, the quantity of corn flour.
1/10 of the koa, you have to put maida, and 1/10 of the koa, you have to put corn flour.
Same.
Same quantity. Maida is white flour, sorry. Okay. Let's move some of this stuff over. Space. Okay. Could you get me a bowl of water from over there? Plain water. All right. So then you just want to mix this into the koa. Okay?
So what is the quantity of this flour?
How much was the
depends.
measurement? The weight? Is that what you're asking? I don't know. It was 1.5 in total, so maybe it was 1 kilo of koa. It doesn't really matter, the weight volume.
No, 1
You have to it's not by weight, it's always done by volume and within cooking. Because things are different weight. So you want to just mix the flours into the koa at first.
Outside we get no ready-made that we cannot. Gulab jamun mix powder. We use
Oh.
gulab jamun mix.
For who?
Is it?
For who? Who are you going to use it for? For God? I don't know. Better you make stuff yourself, isn't it? He's gonna fall asleep.
He's getting relaxed. Wake up.
Cannot use any water or anything.
Not yet.
Simply mix.
Okay. So then, once it's mixed in, like so, then you want to add just enough water to be able to roll a ball without getting cracks in it. So as you can see, there's cracks all over it. So it's definitely too dry to continue. But again, you don't need much water in here. You just kind of dip your fingers in, really, that's all you need. And as much as it comes with your fingers, it's usually enough.
Just add corn flour or something.
No. If you mess up the amount of water, then you're kind of doomed, unless you have more of the koa. Because if you try to start thickening it back up with flour, then you're going to mess up your proportions of flour that's in the dough.
Yes.
And then during frying, then they won't work out. It's a delicate thing. You have to be together. You have to be organized when you make sweets.
How much milk you will need for this big chunk of koa?
It's about maybe 800 grams of koa here. So if you have good cream milk, full cream milk, 4 liters of milk should be plenty. 5. Give it 5. Around here, the milk isn't so good, and you get around 6. Yeah, so 6.5 liters of milk makes about a kilo of this. So if you have good milk in any other part of India, really, or any other part of the world, then you should be able to get around 4 to 5 liters. From 4 to 5 liters of milk, then you should be able to get a kilo of this stuff. And it should be.
And from kilo of this, how many can you make?
A kilo depends on your size, obviously. So, But I usually like to make around 40 to 50 gulabs from 1 kilo of. That's the size I like to make. I don't like to make them too big.
That would be like
If you're doing like flavorings and stuff, where would you add that?
Sorry?
You know, like when they make that orange one, strawberry black,
Really? I've never had
I've
it.
never had it.
No.
In the,
I would put it in the dough though. Color and stuff you're talking about?
No, so they actually put orange essence or rose essence.
Oh, okay, so then you put it in the syrup. Yeah. Put it in the last syrup. Rose I usually always. This ghee gets fried.
something's wrong.
Something's really wrong with the ghee.
It smells different.
It's not very good ghee. He's not meant to burn like that.
And if this happened when we were doing
What?
if this was happening when we were doing our assessment,
I'll make sure you have good ghee. I might just give that ghee back. It's terrible ghee actually.
Is that the same we used last year?
No, well there's two drums. I was taking from the left drum, which is finished now.
is that the size you want as well?
I like them like this. People like to make them bigger. The problem with these gulabs is that, say it again?
Baking powder.
How many what?
Baking powder.
I don't put baking powder. Some people, there's many different ways people do it. In the Mabar Shad, we actually use some chana, paneer. So it just makes them cheaper. It changes the texture a little bit, but mainly it's because of the cost. Bring down the costs a bit. And that's what most people do in Bengal. Most gulabs in Bengal are only chana actually. Only paneer.
It's actually cream cheese, isn't it? Like
No.
blended paneer.
No.
Blended paneer?
That's not cream cheese though.
That's what I thought.
No. No, cream cheese is different. Okay, so can we all do this real quick? Give your hands a wash. If you have any dirt in your pores of your skin here, it's all gonna come off onto the. So make sure your hands are real clean when you do this.
Yeah.
You don't need to prepare.
You wanna give me a hand? Prepare what? We'll fry it here. It gets a bit too hectic if everybody's gonna do it today.
You are doing on the plus.
I'll just show, and then if you guys want to do an assessment, you can try.